I will change my clothes tomorrow. The girls hurried to meet them, as did also the agitated taxi driver. A look of aggrieved bewilderment crossed Sam's face when he learned of this new complication. It had been an effort to deal with Titty, but this was really too much. However, evidently there was nothing for it but to make Matt bet along. To thwart her now seemed worse than any agitation later on. But surely, protested Nell, we can't all intrude upon Mrs. Ledger. It's too much to expect that anyone could welcome so many complete strangers. Percy intervened again. You simply don't know Glastonbury, Nell, she whispered eagerly into Nell's ears while Sam was helping the sick woman into the Ford. Mother Leg's Easter Monday parties are as fixed a custom as the Lord Mayor's show. The fact that she has a house next door full of bedrooms with young Tuesday as door-opener doesn't prevent her from entertaining all the world in her own house. It's certainly... She was interrupted by Sam, who came hurriedly across the dark cobblestone from the Ford to the taxi, anxious to make a start. I've got the woman into your car, Mrs. Spear, he said. She's in great pain, and I doubt if she ought to go. No sooner, however, had he opened the taxi door than Manbet came scrambling out of it. Where be the other gentlemen? She cried wildly, seizing Sam by the arm. Where be me sly heart, me high heart, me pretty laddie, me becking sparrow, me proper dilly darling? Where be the other gentlemen? Thee knows who I do mean, Mr. Sam, the one who did dancy and prancy with Bessie when moon was full, the one who wanted to hurt poor Bessie under thick trit of life on Worrell Hill. You mean Mr. John Crow, Bet, replied Sam with the grave punctilious consideration of the faithful naturalist, whose specimens must be treated with respect under all conditions. Well, jump in here with me and Mrs. Oylin, and perhaps we'll find Mr. Crow at Miss Legg's party. The two conveyances at last were really in motion, Persephone Spear driving Crummy and Mrs. Petherton in her Ford, while Sally Lou took Sam and Nell, along with Medbet, in his taxi. In many quarters of Glastonbury, at 6 o'clock of this holiday, Monday drew near, there were searchings of heart as to who should go and who should not go to this famous party in paradise. It was indeed the fantastic opinion of Mr. Evans that there was a non-moral tradition about this part of Somerset that went back to very old days. He declared that this Easter Monday party was the last surviving relic of some ancient Druidic custom of religious prostitution, that there was even something of the kind in the Arthurian days, that the Grail itself was always guarded by virgins who were no virgins, and that Arthur's sister, the famous Morgan Le Fay, was not much better in her time than old Mrs. Legg today. Mother Legg never invited anyone. Her personal relatives in the town, of whom there were many and who were mostly poor as well as more respectable than she was, flocked naturally there en masse. It thrilled them to observe the manner of the gentry who came in the dresses of the ladies, and though Mother Legg was notoriously stingy over the food, she was fairly liberal, perhaps on general professional grounds, over the drink. Red Robinson, together with his pious mother, the ex-episcopal servant, were among those whose minds were focused on paradise that afternoon. Red was too poor to go to Weymouth or to Weston-super-Mare for the day, as so many of the working men did, for the municipal factory, where he was now employed, was not yet able to compete with the Crow-Dye works in the amount paid their workers. As soon as she had cleared away their midday meal, Mrs. Robinson began talking about Mrs. Legg's party. Not being Glastonbury people, both she and her son were thoroughly puzzled, in fact completely nonplussed in presence of this social phenomenon. This queer mingling of rich and poor, of respectable and disreputable, at a party given by a person who was, as Percy had told Nell, not very different from a madame, was an inexplicable thing to the family from London. Nor had Mrs. Robinson, so she now explained at some length, ever met the like of it in her refined experiences as the great moated palace at Wales. Not to make me go to see such fantastical doings, Mrs. Robinson announced. When I've rested myself a bit, I'll take a stroll down A Street and maybe drop in and have a cup of tea with Mrs. Cole. If I weren't such a hellish-looking die, I'd sit on one of them high hearing seats on Whirl and watch the sights. This here new mayor ought to have a band playing on Whirl, same as they does on imitable towns. Towns that have theatres and pictures and have some life in 'em. Well, Mother, I reckon it'll be getting a move on, said Red Robinson. I don't sigh as high go on to hear fandangle in paradise any more than you. Reckon I'll have to out somewheres of you're having it with Granny Cole. He got up, took his cap and coat, for the afternoon looked decidedly menacing, nodded to his mother and slogged off. He made his way to a portion of the town that was on the outskirts of Paradise, and moving rapidly and cautiously down a narrow street into a grim-looking dwelling, he paid a visit, not altogether an unexpected visit either, to that Morgan woman, as the Western Gazette had always called her, about whose existence he had been trying to worry Philip Crow. Red Robinson certainly was at heart more of a Jacobin than a communist. That is to say, his revolutionary feelings did not run in a calm, implacable, patient, scientific groove, but were feverishly eager to hurt and cause suffering to the enemies of the people, whether it benefited the cause or not. Red Robinson's hatred of Philip Crow was indeed rapidly growing to the dimensions of a monomania. It was gall and wormwood to him to be rebuked by the new mayor and have the secret activities of his exposed and sidetracked. He did not understand Mr. Geard. It was only the sheer pressure of economic necessity that drove him to accept a job in this municipal workshop. It was hateful to find Barter once more his boss. He detested the artistic and mythological aspects of the work he had to do. He distrusted the success of the scheme. Deep in his heart, he pined for a job that had no idealistic nonsense about it. What brought him to pay these increasing visits to Mrs. Morgan was an emotion that was on the road to becoming an urge beyond his control. He was trying to persuade the mother of little Nellie, who was still in her way a beautiful woman, to give herself up to his lust. Lust was the true word for it, for Red Robinson's heart had been monopolized by Crummy, and Crummy, since his misunderstanding with her father, had grown shy of him. But it was velvetily lust, an orchid-spotted lust, a dark, delicious, quivering, maddening lust, which surprised the man himself by its intensity. In his heart he had said, "To hell with them all, as long as I stick to Blackie," for such was Red's playful and tender nickname for his would-be doxy. "I'll have one day by chance of bringing the dowager down." But the maniacal and obsessional elements of his design soon began to run away with the practical element. Day and night he told himself stories of what it would be like when he persuaded Jenny Morgan to give himself up to him. And these stories were not of a kind that corresponded to any tenderness for this woman. Unfortunately, the Morgan woman, unless she was drunk, loathed Red Robinson. And when she was drunk, she melted into tearful sentiment over the memory of her dead husband. There was not a chance, drunk or sober, that the Morgan woman would allow Red to enjoy her in her own little flat. His only chance was to take her out somewhere, and it was with the idea of taking her out of that house next door to Mother Leg's, rumors of which had excited his Cockney lasciviousness, that Red was visiting her today. He was nervous of this adventure, and it was because he vaguely felt that the general stir of the Easter Monday party would make it natural for him to be taking the woman to this locality that he chose this afternoon for his attempt. On reaching her flat, Red found that Nellie's mother was only in the early stage of her habitual intoxication. Chance was in his favor so far, anyway. Red was in a feverish state of anticipation. The idea of satisfying his lust upon the body of Philip Cow's mistress roused something in him, the intensity of which carried him beyond his control and altogether out of his normal depths. Red indeed had brooded so long upon his hatred for Philip, and had nourished so passionately the thought of hurting him through his child's mother, that the idea of enjoying the woman herself, even if she was tipsy, made him feel literally sick with excitement. His half-engagement to Crummy Gerd, now broken off, he hardly knew why, had tantalized his senses while he kept his comparatively chaste. It was an added spice to his purpose that afternoon that he would be, so in his fury he pretended, revenging himself upon Crummy as well as upon Philip, if he could only satisfy his tormented desire with his once handsome, drink-confused creature. Oh, nice guy, huh? The steady aggravation of his hatred for Philip had indeed so mingled with his lust for Philip's girl that they formed together a completely new passion from which there is at present no name. I think we call it kind of a hate fuck, I guess. That's what we call it these days. As he shaved in the morning, as he went to the little wooden privy in his mother's back garden, as he paused in his work at the municipal factory, he would mutter to himself half aloud, I hate him, I'll have her, I'll have her. There can be no doubt that when in his Cockney fashion he used the word ate instead of hate, this curious difference between two monosyllabical sounds was not without its own faint psychic repercussion upon his nervous organism. Between the human feeling expressed by the word hate and the feeling expressed by the same word without the aspirate, there may be little difference. And yet there probably was some infinitesimal difference, which a new science, halfway between philology and psychology, may one day elucidate. Some would say that when Red muttered to himself as he washed, as he shaved, as he excreted, as he worked, as he walked, as he lay down, as he rose up, I hate him, what he really focused in his mind was the emotional state, symbolized as a sensation in his lower jaw, indicated by the dictionary word hate, but it seems as if this was too simple and easy a solution for the problem. However this may be, it can be imagined how the man's heart beat as he stood at last, after a prolonged struggle with the girl. Morganelli's mother was not only about 30, at the elegance to the house next door to Mrs. Legge's. The woman was of a much darker complexion and much more foreign appearance than her daughter. Her face was colorless and so ravished by hard work and drink that it had that particular kind of haggardness in a day which moonlight sometimes produces on human faces. The remains of her beauty were like a shattered arch whose sculptured figures had been defaced by wind and sand. Gray eyes, so large as to give in moments almost a grotesque effect, looked forth from her face contemplating the world with melancholy vacancy. Red derived a curious satisfaction from his endearing nickname for her, which he only dared to use in her face when he was in the early favorable stage of inebriation in which he had succeeded in catching her this afternoon. Even that he did not pronounce the word as he was wont to do in his lascivious dreams of possessing her, when he would cry out, Yes, Blackie, yes, Blackie, yes, Blackie, over and over again. He now rapped timidly on the knocker of the door in front of him, for there was no bell. I think I'll stop there. A little early, but not too early. Until next time, stay safe, fight the good fight. I'll see you in Glastonbury.